Do you want to be able to write a professional author bio? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. What's up, guys? Dave Jacobson here, best-selling author and book publisher. And in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how to write a professional author bio, right? How to write an author biography. I'm not talking about the kind of biography that where you spill the beans on your life story, right? I'm talking about the kind where you might use this, for example, in a query letter, or perhaps on your website or social media. So if that sounds good, guys, I'm going to shrink my melon-sized head here, and we're going to get right into the heart of this content. So as you can see here, I created a template that you can use. You can download this, guys, if you want. I'm going to put a link in the description. Sign up for my mailing list. You'll receive tips on how to write better fiction and related information, as well as how to market your book if you're interested. And I'll share this template with you if you do that. But basically, so you can do this at home. But basically, you know, again, we're talking about author bios here. So there's a number of sort of purposes for author bios, right? We use them in query letters. There's usually a one paragraph in every query letter dedicated to an author bio. If you have a website or a social media channel, you might need this. So that's the kind of bio we're talking about, right? And there's different ways to write it depending on, number one, the type of book that you have written and you're trying to promote. And number two, based on who you're trying to share this with, right? And in what format or context. So first we're going to talk about if you're trying to share this bio on like your website or your social media, and you're going to need to know how to do both. So definitely watch the whole video. Then we're going to talk about the kind of bio that you need for querying agents. And I'm even going to share with you my bio that worked in getting a number of full manuscript requests by agents. So you're going to definitely want to stick around to that, and I'll share that exactly word for word for you. So first, for a website or social media, guys, the first thing you want to know is in this context, right? We're not talking about querying agents yet, but in this context, you want it to be in third person, all right? That's kind of the industry norm and standard. So that's the first kind of tip for you. The second thing is you want to keep these brief and concise, okay? You're not trying to write an entire page or chapter or book. You just want to share a little bit of text, right? For website and social media, you can make these a little bit longer. Obviously, it has to fit within the parameters. Let's say on, you know, there are character limits sometimes on like X, for example. You need to pay attention to those. But these can generally be a little bit longer if you want, right? 200 to 500 words is something to potentially shoot for in terms of a range, right? Depending on the context. Start strong, guys, right? The first sentence is going to be what most people read. Not everyone's going to read your entire bio. So you want to get the key information up front, right? So your first sentence should definitely include your name, the book's title, if there's a specific book that you're marketing or promoting, and any key credentials, right? So let's take a look at some more details on this, right? So this is an example of a first sentence that you might use, right? Again, it's in third person. Now, this is if you're writing and you're me, right? David Jacobson is a neurodivergent writer, right? That's kind of a buzzword. You can throw it in there if you want. You don't have to. But basically what that means in my context is I have diagnosed. Well, I'm not going to go into the details on that. I guess that's a little personal, but you can write whatever you want here, right? David Jacobson is a writer, an expert in 19th century American history, and the author of the book, A Guide to 19th Century History, right? So this is an example of how I've inserted in here. Now, this is not true. I'm not an expert in American history by any means. I'm just using this as an example. But if you were an expert at American history and you wrote a book called A Guide to 19th Century History, you're definitely going to want to put that up front and center, right? So that's the idea here. You want to kind of mention your name, the title of the book that you're promoting or that you're talking about and that you wrote, or something. If it's a notable book that a lot of people have heard of, you definitely want to mention that. And then obviously any kind of expertise or credentials that tie into that book, right? So this is a best case scenario. We're going to talk in a minute about, maybe you don't have any experience. Maybe maybe you wrote fiction. We're going to talk about fiction down below. We're going to get there. But this is just kind of one example of how you might insert credentials, right? Don't worry about it if you're not an expert in anything. Maybe you have a bachelor's degree in English, right? And you can definitely put that as well up here, okay? Just anything that's kind of going to help people understand that you have at least some credibility in terms of what you're writing about, okay? Next, you're going to highlight relevant experience. So this would be in your second and third sentences, right? You want to highlight any relevant experience that explains your connection to the book's subject, right? Or, again, just highlighting your professionalism, your key credentials. For nonfiction, you want to list degrees or professional experience that demonstrate your relation to the topic that you're talking about. And for fiction, you can mention related coursework or previous publications or awards if you happen to have any, right? Or a lifelong interest in the genre. Okay, so now we're going to get into, hopefully that made sense so far, guys. Now we're going to talk about querying agents, okay? So this type of author bio is going to be a little bit different. In the kind we just talked about for website or social media, right? That's your platform. So you have a lot more leeway and you can kind of do whatever you want, right? Because it's your platform. When it comes to querying agents, you have to be a little bit more careful, right? So first thing I want to point out is that it's okay to use first person when you're querying agents, right? Because after all, it's going to be in the context of a query letter. And so you're already kind of talking about yourself and your book, and it's more of a casual but still professional conversation that you're having there in a letter. So you can use first person, but you absolutely want to keep it brief and concise, okay? So put yourself in the shoes of a literary agent for a moment, right? If you hit them up, if somebody hits you up with a wall of text that's like a page or two long, you're just going to want to just run away. You're not going to want to read that wall of text, right? So the most important part of your query letter is where you're talking about the book, right? And what happens in the book. So if you're focused too much on, hey, me, they don't care about you yet, right? Basically, your bio, the function of a bio in a query letter is to not blow it, okay? It's kind of like, if somebody decides they want to go on a date with you and then they've already agreed to kind of go on a date with you, right? Last thing you want to do is say something really stupid and take a huge risk, right? Because then they might cancel their date with you. So you want to kind of play it cool. If they get to the point where they're actually reading your bio, it's because they already kind of like something about your book that you're working on that you submitted or your pages, right? So for the bio, just keep it super conservative is what I'm trying to get at here. Now, for query letters, now I'm going to provide you an example of a successful query letter bio, right? So I have, a little bit about me. I'm a self-published author. I've sold thousands of books under various pen names, primarily on Amazon KDP. I've got a whole nother actually YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the description of that in case you're interested, which focuses more on sort of the Amazon business side of things if you're interested in self-publishing. But I also, am currently pursuing the traditionally published route as well for at least some of my works. So I have experience with query letters, and I've had quite a number of manuscript requests. So I do know this game, and I've had some success with it. So this is going to be an example of an actual query letter that was fortunate enough to get some people to actually request the manuscript. If you know what I'm talking about, if you've done querying before, you know that's kind of difficult to do. So you're definitely going to want to check this out and pay attention to this, right? So here was now I've done a number of these, but this is just one example of an author bio from a successful query letter, right? So this is what I wrote. And notice how concise it is, guys. It's a short paragraph. I'm not trying to tell them my whole life story. I'm a neurodivergent writer with a BA in English and philosophy. Look, that's not, again, not over the top. Like, I'm not saying that I won some huge, crazy award. I'm just telling them that I have a BA in English, right? So I know about the English language. I've written a number of self-published books under a number of pen names, including an Amazon bestseller, and I'm a technical writer for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, right? So professionally, and that's true, I do work for NASA, or I do writing work for NASA. So that's obviously something that if you're trying to convince an agent that you have some experience writing, you don't have to prove to them that, hey, I wrote Harry Potter, right? That's not what they're looking for, right? A literary agent is going to be mostly interested in the work itself, and they're going to basically only read the bio to make sure that, hey, this person has at least some experience with writing, right? So that's the kind of thing you're trying to accomplish in your query letter. Okay, so again, I'm going to put a link in the description. If you guys want this template, like this entire document, I'll send it to you. Just sign up for my newsletter, right? Other factors to consider. So here's some other things you can think about when you're writing a bio, either for querying agents or for a website or social media. Consider adding a personal detail. Now, I didn't really do that in this because I wanted to keep it short, but you could say like, and I live at home with I live in this is where I live, and I live in San Diego with my wife and 2 kids, right? Or something like just a small personal detail, or mention a hobby, or something that's a personal, interesting thing about you, just to kind of make that human connection, right? So you can do that in your bio for social media, website, or if you're querying agents. Also, depending on the context, it also can be a great idea to end with a call to action, right? Potentially you want to include a link to your author website or social media to encourage readers to connect with you further, right? You definitely especially want to do this if you have something impressive that you want to highlight. For example, a successful YouTube channel. If you have that, if you have 50,000 subscribers or even 10,000 subscribers, definitely share that, right? Or if you've got a website that you're really proud of. Okay, also, here's another tip for you guys. Make sure you proofread your bio carefully. That goes for whether it's a bio for a literary agent or for your website. Obviously, guys, always check your grammar and spelling, right? Now, finally, I've added some more examples. I've got a bunch of them. Now, this one is a whimsical fiction example, right? Only do this if you're writing fiction. And I don't necessarily recommend this unless you have full control over the platform. In other words, don't use this kind if you're querying agents, right? But if you want to do this on your website or something like that that can help enhance your author brand, then consider doing something like this, right? Insert name. Lives with 3 mischievous cats in a garden full of talking plants. Well, at least she swears they talk. When she isn't writing about magical mayhem, she can be found baking cookies that never rise and chasing butterflies with her children, right? You can do something like that if you like. Don't do it in a query letter don't do it in a query letter. Just don't do it. It's too risky, okay? But on your website or social media, you can do something like that. Or if you already have an agent and you're going to be a published author, then talk to your publisher and your editor, and if you can do that, right? It might be appropriate for the book. But I'm including a bunch of other examples here, guys, for you. Again, if you want this template, I'm going to put a link in the description. Sign up for my mailing list where I'll give you more tips like this, typically on a weekly basis, no more than that. If you're interested in that kind of thing, feel free and I'll send you the template. Guys, if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing, liking, and I'll see you next time.